It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, and Lisa Daniels, a single mom juggling two jobs, found herself rushing between her shifts. Her apron strings felt tighter than usual, her feet ached, and her mind raced with the endless to-do list waiting for her at home. Lisa wasn't one to complain, though. She had built a life of resilience, determined to provide for her 8-year-old son, Noah. Every smile he gave her was worth every late-night shift and skipped meal. Today was no different. She had just clocked in for her shift at the small, family-owned diner where she worked. The place had a charm of its own, the kind that made regulars feel at home. Yet it was the kind of charm that didn't pay much, forcing Lisa to balance this job alongside others to make ends meet. As she tied her apron and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, she glanced at the clock on the wall. 5 hours until she could get back home to Noah. 5 hours felt like an eternity. The bell above the diner door jingled, signaling a new customer. Lisa grabbed her notepad and turned toward the entrance, ready with a practiced smile. But her smile faltered for a moment as she took in the man stepping through the door. He was massive, easily towering over everyone in the room, and his presence commanded attention without him saying a word. People turned their heads, some whispering to each other. Lisa's heart skipped a beat. She didn't follow sports much, but even she recognized the towering figure as none other than Shaquille O'Neal. He was hard to miss. Broad shoulders, an easy smile, and an energy that filled the space like sunlight through an open window. Lisa tried to push away the nervous energy bubbling inside her. Celebrities didn't usually walk into places like this. Why would they? Yet here he was, casually scanning the room before settling into a booth near the window. Lisa took a deep breath, steadying herself as she approached his table. "Good afternoon. Welcome to Mike's Diner. What can I get started for you today?" she asked, her voice steadier than she expected. Shaquille looked up, his warm smile meeting hers. "Hey there," he said in his deep, unmistakable voice. "What's good here?" For a split second, Lisa forgot about her exhaustion and the weight of her responsibilities. This was a surreal moment, and yet she had to focus. She recommended the diner's famous pancakes, which Shaq enthusiastically ordered, along with a coffee. Lisa jotted down his order and headed back to the kitchen, her hands trembling slightly. As she prepared to serve the food, she couldn't help but notice how friendly and approachable Shaquille was. He took pictures with the staff, exchanged laughs with the other customers, and seemed genuinely present. There wasn't a trace of arrogance, just a larger-than-life man who somehow made everyone feel at ease. When Lisa returned with his pancakes, she tried to remain professional, but Shaq's easy demeanor made her smile. "Hope you enjoy these. They're my personal favorite," she said. "Thanks, Lisa," he replied, glancing at her name tag. "I'm sure I will." The interaction was brief, but something about the way he said her name lingered in her mind. As she moved on to her other tables, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just an ordinary day. A while later, Shaquille stood up, stretching his enormous frame, and waved goodbye to the diners who had been excitedly watching him. Lisa watched from behind the counter, thinking that was the end of it. But then, as she cleared his table, she noticed something unusual. Under the coffee cup was a folded note with her name written on it in bold letters. Next to the note was something that made her heart stop: a crisp stack of cash, far more than the cost of his meal. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the note. The first words made her eyes well up instantly. This wasn't just a thank you message. It was something much deeper, something that would change her life in ways she couldn't have imagined. And that's when Lisa's tears began to flow. Lisa stared at the note in her hands, her heart racing as she read the neatly written words. "Lisa, thank you for your kindness and for being the amazing person you are. I don't know your story, but something tells me you deserve a little break. Take care of yourself and your little one. Shaq." Her breath caught in her throat. How did he know about Noah? She glanced around the diner as if the answer might be somewhere in the room, but all she found were familiar faces and the buzz of everyday life. Shaq had already left, disappearing as quietly as he had arrived. The stack of cash sat beside her, crisp and intimidating. She quickly flipped through it, her fingers trembling. It wasn't just a tip, it was thousands of dollars. Lisa's mind raced. Was this real? Why would someone like Shaquille O'Neal leave her such a generous gift? She felt a mix of emotions, gratitude, disbelief, and a strange sense of vulnerability. Tears blurred her vision, and she wiped them away quickly. She didn't want anyone to see her crying at work. But as the minutes passed, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a kind gesture. Shaq's words lingered in her mind, especially the part about her story. How much did he really know? Lisa had always prided herself on her strength, on keeping her struggles private. She never wanted to be seen as someone who needed pity or charity. But here she was, holding a note from a man she barely knew, and it felt like he had somehow seen right through her. As her shift dragged on, Lisa tried to focus on her work, but the note and the money weighed heavily on her mind. She found herself replaying every moment of her interaction with Shaq, searching for clues. Had she said something that gave away her situation? Or was it just the way she carried herself, the tiredness in her eyes, the lines of worry etched into her face? By the time her shift ended, Lisa was emotionally drained. She tucked the money into her purse, feeling a strange mix of guilt and relief. She knew she should be grateful. It wasn't every day that a single mom struggling to make ends meet received a financial miracle, but a part of her couldn't help but wonder why it had happened to her. When Lisa finally walked through the door of her small apartment, she was greeted by the sound of Noah's laughter. He was sitting on the floor, surrounded by his action figures, creating an elaborate battle scene. "Mom!" he exclaimed, jumping up to hug her. "You're home!" Lisa hugged him tightly, the day's events swirling in her mind. "Hey, buddy, how was school?" "Great. I got a gold star for my science project." Noah beamed, his smile lighting up the room. "That's amazing," Lisa said, forcing a smile. She couldn't let him see the storm of emotions she was feeling. As Noah chattered about his day, Lisa went to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. She pulled the note from her pocket, reading it again and again, as if trying to unlock its secrets. Shaq's words were simple, yet they carried a weight that Lisa couldn't ignore. She thought about calling someone to share what had happened, but who would she even tell? Most of her friends were busy with their own lives, and she didn't want to come across as bragging. Her family wasn't in the picture, and Noah was too young to understand. For now, it was her secret, a strange, wonderful, and confusing secret. That night, after Noah had gone to bed, Lisa sat at the small kitchen table with the note and the money in front of her. She thought about all the things she could do with it: pay off some bills, buy new clothes for Noah, maybe even take a day off work for the first time in years. But as she stared at the pile of cash, a gnawing question crept into her mind. Why did Shaq choose her? Was it just random luck, or was there something more to it? Lisa's curiosity only grew as the days passed. The story of Shaq's visit quickly became the talk of the diner. Customers and co-workers alike speculated about why he had stopped by, and Lisa found herself at the center of their questions. She played it off as no big deal, downplaying the money and the note. But inside, she was desperate for answers. One night, after putting Noah to bed, Lisa sat down with her laptop and typed Shaquille O'Neal's name into the search bar. She knew he was a retired basketball star, but she didn't know much beyond that. As she scrolled through articles and videos, she discovered stories about his generosity, paying for strangers' meals, donating to families in need, and even buying cars for people who were struggling. The more she read, the more it made sense. Shaq was known for his big heart, and it seemed he had a knack for sensing when someone needed help. But Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that there was something personal about what he had done for her. She thought about reaching out to him, but the idea felt absurd. What would she even say? Thank you seemed so inadequate, and she didn't want to come across as ungrateful or intrusive. As the weeks went by, life started to feel a little lighter. Lisa used the money to pay off some overdue bills and treat Noah to a new set of school supplies. For the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe, but even as her financial burdens eased, the mystery of Shaq's gesture lingered in her mind. One evening, while flipping through her old journal, Lisa came across an entry from years ago, one she had written during one of the darkest periods of her life. In it, she had poured out her fears about being a single mom, her struggles to provide for Noah, and her hopes for a better future. The words felt like a time capsule, a reminder of how far she had come and how much she still wanted to achieve. As she closed the journal, a thought struck her. Maybe Shaq's gesture wasn't about the money or the note. Maybe it was about something deeper, a reminder that she wasn't alone, that even in her hardest moments, someone saw her worth. The realization brought a sense of peace, but it also reignited her curiosity. Who was Shaquille O'Neal beyond the headlines and the highlights? And what had made him choose that diner, that table, that moment to change her life? Lisa didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing for certain. Her story was far from over. Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that Shaq's visit had been more than a coincidence. Every time she walked into the diner, she found herself looking toward the booth where he had sat, half expecting him to show up again. It was ridiculous, she knew that, but the questions in her mind wouldn't leave her alone. Her co-workers had stopped asking about the encounter, but she could still hear their whispers. "Why her?" they'd mutter. "What makes Lisa so special?" Some of them even seemed jealous, though Lisa wished they could understand how conflicted she felt. The money had helped ease her financial burden, but it had also left her with a lingering sense of uncertainty. One slow afternoon, as Lisa wiped down tables, the diner's owner, Mike, approached her. He was an older man with a kind face, someone who had always treated his employees like family. "Lisa," he began, his voice soft, "I've been meaning to ask. That day Shaq came in, did he say anything to you? Anything unusual?" Lisa hesitated, unsure of how much to share. "Not really," she replied. "He was just really kind, left a nice tip too." Mike nodded, his brow furrowed. "He didn't mention why he came here. I mean, of all the places he could have gone." "No," Lisa said, shaking her head. "I don't think so." Mike gave her a long look, as if trying to read her thoughts. "Well, if you ever figure it out, let me know. It's not every day a guy like that walks into a place like this." Lisa nodded, but the conversation only deepened her curiosity. Why had Shaq chosen their diner? Had it been random, or was there a reason? That evening, after putting Noah to bed, Lisa decided to do something she hadn't done in a long time. She pulled out a notebook and began to write. She started with the facts of the day Shaq had visited, trying to piece together any clues she might have missed. But as she wrote, her thoughts shifted to her own life, her struggles, her dreams, and the moments that had shaped her into the person she was. The act of writing felt cathartic, almost like having a conversation with herself. For the first time in years, Lisa allowed herself to reflect on everything she had been through. She thought about the nights she had stayed up worrying about rent, the mornings she had skipped breakfast so Noah could eat, and the countless times she had pushed through exhaustion because giving up wasn't an option. Somewhere in the process, Lisa realized that Shaq's gesture had done more than just help her financially. It had reminded her of her own strength, her resilience, and yet she still felt like there was a piece of the puzzle missing. The next day, something unexpected happened. As Lisa was serving a table of regulars, One of them, an older woman named Mrs. Carter, leaned in conspiratorially. "Lisa, I heard something interesting," Mrs. Carter said, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. "Oh," Lisa replied, trying to sound casual. "Apparently, Shaquille O'Neal's mother used to live in this area," Mrs. Carter said. "I overheard it at the beauty salon. Do you think that's why he came here?" Lisa froze. She had never heard anything about Shaq's connection to the neighborhood. Could it be true? And if it was, what did that mean for her? "Maybe," Lisa said, her mind racing. "That's really interesting." Mrs. Carter nodded, clearly enjoying the intrigue. "I thought you'd like to know. It's a small world, isn't it?" Lisa thanked her and went about her day, but the information gnawed at her. If Shaq's mother had lived nearby, could that explain why he had chosen the diner? And if so, how did that connect to her? That night, Lisa stayed up late, scrolling through online forums and news articles, searching for any mention of Shaq's ties to the area. She found a few vague references to his childhood, but nothing concrete. Still, the possibility added a new layer to the mystery, one that made her even more determined to find answers. In the days that followed, Lisa started paying closer attention to the people around her. She began to wonder if anyone else knew more about Shaq's visit than they were letting on. One afternoon, while chatting with a delivery driver who frequented the diner, she casually brought up the topic. "Hey, did you hear about Shaq stopping by here a few weeks ago?" Lisa asked. The driver, a friendly guy named Tony, nodded. "Yeah, I heard. Crazy, right? I saw his car parked out front that day. It was hard to miss." Lisa's ears perked up. "You saw his car? What kind of car was it?" Tony grinned. "Oh, it was a beauty. Some kind of luxury SUV. Black, shiny, the works. Why?" "No reason," Lisa said, trying to hide her excitement. "I was just curious." That little detail seemed insignificant, but to Lisa it felt like a clue. If she could find out more about the car, maybe she could trace it back to him. It was a long shot, but at this point, she was willing to try anything. As Lisa continued her quiet investigation, she started to notice other changes in her life. The note from Shaq had sparked something inside her, a sense of possibility that she hadn't felt in years. She began to dream again, to think about what she wanted for herself and Noah. But with those dreams came new challenges. Some of her co-workers had started treating her differently, their jealousy thinly veiled as fake smiles and passive-aggressive comments. Lisa tried to brush it off, but it hurt to feel like an outsider in a place that had once felt like home. Through it all, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that her story with Shaq wasn't over. There were too many unanswered questions, too many loose ends. She didn't know where the journey would lead, but she was determined to find out. For now, though, she would have to be patient. Because if there was one thing Lisa had learned in her life, it was that some answers take time to reveal themselves. Lisa's determination to uncover the truth about Shaq's visit became something she couldn't ignore. Every day, as she served customers at the diner, her mind raced with questions. Why had he chosen her? Was it just a random act of kindness? Or was there something more to it? The possibilities swirled in her mind, keeping her awake at night. She tried to focus on her routine, but even the simplest tasks felt different now. Noah had started to notice the change in her demeanor. One evening, as they sat at the kitchen table eating dinner, he looked up at her with those bright, curious eyes. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft but filled with concern. Lisa managed a smile, reaching over to touzle his hair. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking about some things." "Is it about that big guy at the diner?" Noah asked. "The one everyone keeps talking about?" Lisa blinked, surprised by his perceptiveness. "What makes you say that?" Noah shrugged, his small shoulders lifting. "You seem different since he came. Like you're, I don't know, waiting for something." His words hit her harder than she expected. Was she waiting for something? Or was she just chasing answers to questions that might never be resolved? Lisa hugged him tightly, grateful for his innocence and insight. "Don't you worry about me, buddy. I'm just trying to figure some things out." But the truth was, Lisa didn't have any answers, and the more she thought about it, the more restless she became. A week later, Lisa finally caught a break. She had reached out to Tony, the delivery driver, and asked if he remembered any specific details about Shaq's car. Tony, always eager to help, said he'd look into it. That evening, as Lisa was finishing her shift, Tony stopped by the diner. With a triumphant grin, "Lisa, I think I've got something for you," he said, pulling out his phone. "I found a picture online of a car just like the one Shaq was driving. It's a custom job, super rare." Lisa leaned in, her heart pounding as she looked at the photo. It was a sleek black SUV with unique detailing, the kind of vehicle that stood out even in a crowd. Tony continued, "There's a car dealership a couple of towns over that specializes in these. If anyone knows about it, they would." Lisa felt a surge of hope. This was the closest she had come to a lead, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. She thanked Tony and promised to follow up. The next day, on her day off, Lisa made a trip to the dealership. The place was intimidating, with rows of luxury cars gleaming under the sun. Lisa felt out of place in her simple jeans and sweatshirt, but she squared her shoulders and walked inside. A salesman approached her, all polished smiles and practiced charm. "Welcome. How can I help you today?" Lisa hesitated, suddenly unsure of how to phrase her question. "I'm looking for some information about a car. It's a custom SUV, black, with—" Before she could finish, the salesman interrupted. "Ah, you must be talking about the one we worked on for Shaquille O'Neal. Beautiful car, isn't it?" Lisa's heart skipped a beat. "Yes, that's the one. Do you know if he still has it?" The salesman gave her a curious look. "I'm not sure, but we did some maintenance on it not too long ago. Why do you ask?" Lisa felt a pang of embarrassment. She hadn't thought this far ahead. "Oh, I met him recently, and I was curious." The salesman nodded, clearly. "Used to people being starstruck." "Makes sense. He's a great guy, always generous. You know, he does a lot for the community." Lisa thanked him and left the dealership, feeling a mix of excitement and frustration. She was getting closer to understanding the connection, but there were still so many unanswered questions. On her way home, Lisa stopped at a coffee shop to collect her thoughts. As she sipped her drink, she replayed everything in her mind. The note, the money, the stories about Shaq's generosity. There was a pattern to it all, but she couldn't quite put the pieces together. Just then, her phone buzzed with a message. From Mike, the diner owner. "Hey Lisa, a reporter stopped by today asking about Shaq's visit. They want to talk to you. Call me when you can." Lisa's stomach flipped. A reporter? She wasn't sure if she was ready for that kind of attention, but the thought of someone else digging into the story sparked a sense of urgency. If she didn't figure this out soon, someone else might beat her to it. That night, after Noah was asleep, Lisa sat at the kitchen table with her notebook. She wrote down everything she knew so far, trying to connect the dots. She thought about the possibility that Shaq's mother had lived nearby and wondered if that could explain his visit. Maybe the diner held some sentimental value for him, or perhaps he had chosen it for reasons she couldn't yet understand. As the hours ticked by, Lisa felt the tension building inside her. She was so close, but the answers remained just out of reach. And then, as she stared at the page in front of her, a thought struck her like a bolt of lightning. What if Shaq hadn't chosen the diner at random? What if someone had told him about her? The possibility sent shivers down her spine. But who would have done that, and why? Lisa didn't have the answers yet, but she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't going to stop until she found out the truth. As Lisa sat at her kitchen table, the thought of someone tipping Shaq off about her wouldn't leave her mind. It made her question everything, her co-workers, her regular customers, even her neighbors. Could someone have told him about her struggles? But why would they do that? And how would they even get in touch with someone like him? The next day at the diner, Lisa found herself looking at everyone with fresh eyes. Every smile, every passing glance felt loaded with meaning. Was there someone in her life who had been quietly watching, someone who cared enough to reach out to Shaquille O'Neal on her behalf? The idea was both comforting and unsettling. Mid-morning, the bell above the diner's door jingled, and Lisa turned to see an unfamiliar man walk in. He was tall, with a confident stride and an air of importance. Dressed in a sharp suit, he didn't look like the kind of person who would usually stop by for coffee and pie. Lisa's heart skipped a beat as the man scanned the room, his eyes landing on her. He approached her station, his expression unreadable. "Excuse me," he said, his voice smooth and professional. "Are you Lisa?" Lisa nodded, her throat suddenly dry. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" The man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, handing it to her. "My name is Jordan Phillips. I work with Mr. O'Neal." Lisa stared at the card, her mind racing. Why would someone from Shaq's team be here? "Mr. O'Neal asked me to deliver a message," Jordan continued. "He said you might have some questions, and he thought it was time you got some answers." Lisa's hands trembled as she held the card. "What kind of answers?" Jordan smiled faintly. "I can't tell you much myself, but he asked me to arrange for you to meet. With him, if you're interested, that is." The room seemed to spin around her. A meeting with Shaq? It felt like something out of a dream, but before she could respond, a thought struck her like a lightning bolt. "Wait," Lisa said, her voice shaking. "Why now? Why didn't he just tell me everything the first time he was here?" Jordan hesitated, his polished demeanor faltering for just a moment. "Let's just say there are some things he wasn't ready to share before, but he believes it's the right time now." Lisa wasn't sure what to think. The mysterious timing only deepened her suspicions. But how could she say no to a chance to finally get the answers she'd been seeking? "When and where?" she asked, her voice steadier now. Jordan handed her a small envelope. "The details are in here. It's up to you whether you want to go. Either way, he wanted me to tell you that he wishes you and your son the very best." With that, Jordan gave her a polite nod and left the diner, leaving Lisa standing there, clutching the envelope like it was a lifeline. As the day wore on, Lisa debated whether she should open it. Part of her was afraid of what she might find. Another twist, another layer of mystery. But another part of her, the part that had been searching for answers since the moment Shaq walked into her life, knew she couldn't walk away now. That evening, after putting Noah to bed, Lisa sat at the kitchen table and opened the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper with an address and a time. The meeting was set for 2 days from now, at a private venue in the city. Lisa felt her stomach churn with nerves. What could Shaq possibly have to tell her that required this level of secrecy? The questions kept her awake that night, her mind spinning with possibilities. The next day, as Lisa prepared for work, she noticed something unusual. Her mailbox, usually stuffed with bills and junk mail, contained a small package with no return address. Her name was scrawled on the front in neat handwriting. Curious and apprehensive, Lisa brought the package inside and carefully opened it. Inside was a small framed photo of a young boy standing next to a woman who looked strikingly familiar. The boy had a wide, mischievous grin, and the woman's eyes sparkled with warmth. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. She recognized the boy immediately. It was Shaquille O'Neal as a child, but it was the woman in the photo that sent a chill down her spine. She looked eerily similar to Lisa, as if they could have been related. Her hands shook as she examined the frame, searching for some kind of clue. On the back was a handwritten note that read, "Sometimes the answers are closer than you think." Lisa stared at the photo, her mind reeling. What was the connection between her and Shaq's mother, and who had sent the package? The stakes had never felt higher. Lisa knew she was on the brink of discovering something that could change everything. But with each new twist, the questions only seemed to multiply, pulling her deeper into a mystery she wasn't sure she was ready to unravel.